This gives you an idea of how magnificent the Quran is. You know, it is the Quran al-Karim, but it's also the majestic Quran. It's the generous Quran, but it's the majestic Quran as well, because it is the word of Allah. It's the uncreated word of Allah, and no one can destroy it. You know, Allah will preserve it until the Qiyamah, as He's promised in His book. So what happens is that very early on in a young person's life, their aspirations can be towards the dunya, or they can be towards Allah and His Messenger. And what a difference there is. And Imam al-Ghazali, he says there are two very important times in a person's life. One when they're 20, and one when they're 40. He said around the age of 20, you know, you have a basic education, whatever your education's been, and then some people will say, I'm going to go for the dunya, you know, I'm going to go for the money, I'm going to go for the wealth, I'm going to go for the beautiful wife, I'm going to go for this, that and the other, all the things that are masi wallah, you know, other than Allah. And it's very attractive. You know, I remember Shaykh Abdul Qadir, he said this world is designed to stop you finding out, because the more you, Sidna Isa said, this world is like drinking seawater. The more you drink of it, the more thirsty you get. So the more you get of the dunya, the more you want. You see people like that, you know, they're chasing and chasing. You know, look at Donald Trump, he just can't have enough. You know, now he wants to destroy Iran just so he can have a few more $1 billion worth of oil, but for what? You know, he won't be able to take it to the grave with him. But some people are like that, and some people say that this devouring of the conqueror isn't really, it's a sign of a baby who wasn't fed properly when it was young. It was never satisfied, it was always hungry. Somehow the mother didn't give the milk and the wisdom that the Prophet said, when a mother was feeding the child properly, the child has milk and wisdom. And if the child doesn't receive that, then the child is always hungry. You find that with some people, they're always hungry. They're never satisfied, they always must have more. Even if their stomach is stuffed full, they're still not satisfied. Because what they want isn't the food, you know, it's the love that they didn't get as a baby. And there's nothing that can be done to change that. But then also, you will find the people at the age of 20, they say, well, wow, you know, that first 20 years has gone by really quickly. I really must focus on getting knowledge, because otherwise I'm going to get diverted. You know, I'm going to get diverted by the dunya, and my life will go, and then sorry, what did I do with it? So for some they chase after the dunya, and for some they chase after knowledge. This is what Shaykh Ghazali says. And then he says the next important age is 40, because he says at 40 the person who chased after the dunya is already finished. You know, they're worn out, they're tired, you know, they're finished, you know, they're worn out, and they lose joy of life. You know, suddenly they're overweight and they're not satisfied by what they have, and they're not going to catch up ever, and it's too late. But for the person who's seeking knowledge, when they get to 40, this is when life begins, because in those 20 years they've accumulated knowledge and wisdom. And it's said that this is the age of Sidna Yusuf. You know, when Sidna Yusuf was given the keys of the kingdom of Egypt, and was given control over all the storehouses, and given authority in the land, this was when he was 40. You know, Allah says we gave him wisdom at this age, we gave him hikmah. So it's not just knowledge, it's not information, it's hikmah, it's wisdom. And then also, another very important thing that Imam al-Ghazali spoke about was, he said each of us has three energies that drive us through life. He said in each of us, in us, there is a pig, and there is a dog, and there is a sage. So, you know, the pig is after the food, and the dog is after the sex, and the sage is after wisdom. He said, if either the pig or the dog are in charge, you're in trouble. He said, if the sage is in charge, then inshallah khair. Because these energies all have to be looked after. You know, the deen does not deny them. It doesn't say you should never eat. It doesn't say you should never have sexual relations. But it says that do it in a certain way. You know, when you eat, thuluth, you know, third food, third water, third for air. Only eat when you're hungry, and then don't eat until you're full. You know, this is the hikmah. This is the deep medicine of the sunnah, because you see so many people who don't follow that, they get ill. Because the Prophet ﷺ said nearly all illnesses begin in the stomach. But if you follow that simple sunnah, you'll find that you're healthy and you're not overweight. And so you're in control of your pig. And if you have a good family and they, you know, I know one young lady, she's died now, and this was many years ago, but she said, you know, I said to my parents when I was a young woman, please, you know, you know me better than I know me. Find a good husband for me, and I'll trust your judgment. And so they find a good husband, and they, you know, introduced them, and they discussed it, and they said, yeah, let's go for it. So this wasn't a forced, arranged marriage, but it was an arranged marriage with consent. And bil maruf, you know, with hikmah and with knowledge, and she was very happily married, and I met, you know, the husband, fine man. I think he's still alive. Yusuf Faruqi, he's, you know, Hafiz of Quran. I think he's living in Karachi now. But such a fine pair. And then there are other ways that you can find your partner in life. But if basically you find your partner in life within the hudud of Allah, according to the sunnah, then you will have khair. And if you're mu'minat and you marry a mu'min, khair. If you're mu'min and you marry mu'minat, khair. If you fall for one of the kafirun, watch out. Because suddenly you find they're not what they, you know, they may be very beautiful or very handsome, but where is their heart? You know, what is their qibla? And when you begin married life with someone who's not Muslim, suddenly you find your worlds apart. You know, when Ramadan comes, they say, oh, you're not going to fast for a month, are you? Instead of saying, alhamdulillah, you know, my favourite month. You know, I really enjoy Ramadan. You know, I really enjoy breaking the fast with everyone and doing the tarawih and, you know, those moments of knowledge and the Laylatul Qadr and, you know, all these barakas that we as Muslims enjoy. The kafirun can't even stand the idea of it. So if you've married a kafir, that will become very apparent in Ramadan, even if they're a very fine person. And this is why, you know, my advice to everyone is only marry someone if they're Muslim. And don't marry someone who's just accepted Islam so they can marry you, which sometimes happens. You know, marry someone who recognizes that the deen is true, and that the Quran is true, and that the Prophet is true, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there's no one better to follow. You know, then you will be safe. And then you will enjoy increasing your knowledge. Because there's so many different ways knowledge can be increased. And you know, the more you study the seerah of the Rasul, the more your understanding of the first community grows. So often you will read a particular episode in the seerah, and it will be like you're there. You know, there was a time when after the conquest of Mecca, when Sidna Ali was after someone, he wanted to kill him, you know, for some reason that had happened in the Jahiliyyah. I can't remember the person's name, but he went to one of the lady members of the community, Muslim, and said, I need sanctuary. You know, I'm seeking your protection. She said, I'll give it to you. So can you remember her name?
Not really.
Yeah, I remembered it just recently and then I've forgotten it again. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, the thing was that she had given her word. She said, I will protect you. So when Sidna Ali came, he knew this man was hiding in her house. He said, I want this man. He's done such and such. He deserves to die. She said, I'm sorry. I've given him my protection. You'll have to take it to the Rasul. And then he tried to force himself past her. And he said it was like I was trying to push aside Mount Uhud. I just couldn't get past her. Because of the strength of her niyyah that I've given this man protection and I'm not going to betray it. So nothing would move her. And when you read things, you know, stories like this, it's almost like you're there at the doorway and you can see Sidna Ali trying to get in. She's just not letting him pass and he can't get past. So in the end, the matter, I think, was resolved, with the help of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But these things, this is just one story, but there's so many stories for each of the Sahaba, and especially the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his family and his wives and his children, that your knowledge grows, and then it goes to the Tabi'in and the Tabi'in. So they'll say of Hassan al-Basra, he was most like the Tabi'in, even though he never. He was most like the Sahaba, wasn't it? He was the most like the Sahaba, even though he never met the Rasul face to face, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they have this way of measuring people. That wasn't, he knew this many hadith, or he knew that many ayats of Quran, or he knew so many meanings, but what he was like as a person, what his being was like. And this is something you never finish increasing knowledge of, and that's why Allah says, say Allahumma zidni ilma, Allah, increase me in knowledge. And if you make that dua with sincerity, Allah will answer it. Allah says, when you ask, I'm near. When you ask, I will answer. It's not like you're knocking on a door and there's no one at the door. The door will open. It may not open when you want it to, but it will open. And this is what the Rasul said. He said, when you make a dua, one of three things happens. Either Allah grants it straight away, or He grants it later on at the best time for you, or if you asked for something that actually wasn't going to do you any good, then He doesn't grant it, but He gives you a reward because you asked Allah for it. You see, so you're always a win-win situation. If you make a dua to Allah, you're never going to lose out. You can never say Allah didn't listen, or Allah didn't answer the dua. And sometimes you make a dua and sometimes it's years later and then you say, it's been answered. You almost forgot you made the dua, and then when it's answered, then you remember you made the dua, a long time ago. So then you see Allah's measuring of time is different to ours. Because our knowledge of time is very short. We know, what is within our consciousness where we are. We're in time. And all of us in this room will have a different memory of this talk, and we'll remember different things about it, and we'll remember different things about the people who are here. Each one of us will have a slightly different meaning, even though we're all here at the same time, same place. But Allah knows everything, even before this afternoon happened. He already written who was going to be here. He already written who was going to hear what. He already written who was going to get up and who was going to get down. He knows everything. And this is not only this room, but it's the whole world. And it's not only now, but it's from the beginning of time until the Qiyamah. This is Allah's knowledge. It's so vast, we can't even begin to imagine it. And this is part of the reality of the ayah, La tudrikul absar wa huwa yudrikul absar. Vision cannot contain them. You can't imagine what Allah is, what He knows, but He contains vision. He encompasses all our seeings with His seeing, and all our knowings with His knowing. And this is why we go to Him for knowledge. And this is why we go to Him for marifah. So, each one of us, in our day-to-day life, we always have a choice. All the people of knowledge, they say you have four enemies. Your nafs, shaitan, hawa, and the dunya. Your nafs is yourself. It's your worst enemy until it's purified. Hawa is your desires. Dunya is what your desires are often directed to. And shaitan is the one who whispers and says, go for that, go for this. Forget about the akhirah, forget about Allah, they're far away. Because shatana means to distance. He tries to make Allah seem far away. Although Allah is closer to us than our jugular vein, He tries to make, Allah's, you can't even see Him, He's far away. And Yawmul Qiyamah, far away. Akhirah, fire in the garden, they might even be a dream, they might even not exist. This is how shaitan works, to make things seem distant. So he's your enemy. Again and again in the Quran, Allah says, He is your enemy. Mubin, clear enemy. And His work is to lead you astray. And in that famous interaction with Allah, He says, when He asks to be given life until the Qiyamah, and He says, I will tempt your slaves. I'll come from in front of them, I'll come from behind them, I'll come from this side, I'll come from that side. The one way direction he doesn't say is, I'll come from above, because Allah's rahmah comes from above. and if you are ikhlas, if you are mukhlis, Allah says in the Quran, shaitan cannot lead astray my slaves who are mukhlis, who are sincere. These are the people of Surah Al-Ikhlas. So it's good to recite Surah Al-Ikhlas a lot. There was one Sahaba, he was always reciting it. And the Rasul said he will go to the garden because of his love for Surah Al-Ikhlas. But with it came his condition of being mukhlis, of being sincere. So for the mukhlis, shaitan cannot win. His plot, his plan is always weak. You have to remember that. And if sometimes you think he's getting the upper hand, you just have to say, A'udhu billahi samil alim minash shaitanir rajim 10 times, and he's out of the picture. But then you have to control your desires. You have to control how much of the dunya you want. And if you're wise, you will direct your himma, which really is the Arabic word for aspiration. It's a yearning, it's a desire. But direct your himma not for the dunya, but for the creator of the dunya. Yeah? Not the khalq, but the khaliq. And if you do this, if you're always seeking knowledge of Allah, if you're always seeking knowledge of Allah in the moment, in what's happening. One of the du'as of the Rasul, he said, Allah, teach me to see you in whatever happens, before it, during it, and after it. So in other words, this is an uninterrupted vision of Tawheed. It's not an idea, it's a seeing. It's a seeing with the heart. It's to do with the basira. So when Allah says it's not the eyes which are blind, but it's the heart, the breasts and the hearts and the breasts of men which are blind, He's talking about basira. Some people, their basira is fast asleep. Some it's wide awake. The Rasul said, even when I'm sleeping, I'm not sleeping, because my basira is awake. He said, I still see what's going on. He was unique, but there are awliya that have some of this, like a drop compared to his ocean. And this is something that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq had. And all the great Sahaba, they had this quality, and his wives, they had this quality of seeing with the heart. And so when you ask Allah to give you knowledge, ask Him to give you knowledge of the heart, not information in the head. There's a place for information. You need information. Like, I need to know that's a glass and that's water in it and I can drink it. That's useful information. But one of the great du'as is, Allah, protect me from useless knowledge. There's so much useless knowledge around. So much, it's not even knowledge, it's useless information. And you can get so clogged up with it. Especially with the internet, it's coming at you from every angle. So you have to learn to switch it off. You have to learn to switch off the television, or to say, well, I'm not going to see the end of this clip on my iPhone or on my laptop, because it's rubbish. So I won't I won't waste my time. And if you use your time well, then you will find that the aspirations that you had when you were a young person, whether a girl or a boy, and you knew you had this wonderful gift of life that had been given to you, and you wanted to do so many wonderful things with it, you will find that you've honored it, and you have done wonderful things with it. And then when it comes time to die, you will be content. And you will, inshallah, be one of those who enters the garden pleased with Allah and Allah pleased with you. This is what we all aim for. We want to be amongst those ibad that Allah says, enter my garden, pleased and well-pleasing. And then you say, job done. But real job done is you end up in the akhirah, and you drink from the heart of the Rasul, and in sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and inshallah you're with all the people that you loved, including the Rasul, and the companions, and the tabi'in, and the tabi'in, all the people that you got to know about, and you loved them because of who they were, and then the people you knew in the dunya. And inshallah you will be with all the people you loved, and also all the people who loved you, you'll be with them as well. So this is the job done we aim for. So Bismillah, Allah, we ask that you give us all a high aspiration. Ameen. And the aspirations that we have in our youth, Allah, we ask that we honour them in the best way. Ameen. By seeking knowledge of you and your Rasul, and following the Rasul. so that you love us and you forgive us our wrong actions. And Allah, we ask that we tread the Sirat al-Mustaqim with certainty and with enjoyment of life and with firmness, that no one can divert us from it, and that we cross the Sirat on the Yamul Hisab, over the fire into the garden, and that we are with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that we drink from the Hawd, and that we are with all the people that we loved and all the people who loved us. And Allah, we ask this for all the Muslims in this time, and all the Muslims who are to come, and all the Muslims who have ever been. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك نبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما عدد خلقك ورضا نفسك وزنة عرشك ومداد كلماتك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله.
I would like to say thank you very much and Jazakallah khairan to our honorable guest and speaker of today's event, Al-Hajj Ahmad Thomson, for this very beautiful and informative lecture on the important topic of aspirations of youth.